We talk a lot here about branding and what it means to, position yourself and differentiate yourself from your competitors. And Bumble is changing what made the brand its brand. And so this is after the CEO left. And so the current board and CEO are deciding to reverse its signature mechanic of women messaging first. Now they're going to allow men to make that first move. And it's very interesting to think about it now, where it's like, is this the only way to save the company? Or is it losing the main thing that made it what it was, you know? And I was thinking about this because I just flew up to San Francisco and back using Southwest. And it was the first time that I had to fly with assigned seating as opposed to, open seating. And that was like a very big thing that we talked about last year where, Southwest got rid of not only the assigned seating, but the free checked bags. And now you have to pay for bags and you have to, choose a seat and pay for that, right? And at the time I said that, I expected it to blow up in their faces because, all the other airlines are doing the same thing. But I went and I looked at the numbers and apparently the stock is up 23% year to date. Their revenue hit a record 8.4 billion, up 16.4%. And their own research is saying that 80% of customers prefer assigned seating. And that open seating was the number one reason that customers left for their competitors. So sounds like that's essentially killing it for them, right? Where now it's like they're winning, following what every other brand is doing, because their customers wanted that. And then the ones who didn't want that, like me, were in the minority. So I'll be curious to see how it, comes out with Bumble, whether this is going to be a thing that helps save the business or if they're, gonna end up failing. I think part of what I had been thinking about is how much it means, I guess, societally, how much has changed from when Bumble launched. And this was like heralded as like the way for, women to take the first move. And then realize how much of it is changing now that like, it seems as if younger demographics are a bit more, traditional and want to have, more of those like gender roles played out. And this is one of those examples. So Jonathan, did you see this? Would love to know your thoughts in terms of both brands changing or, it like working or not.
Yeah, well, and to bridge our topics a little bit too, I do really believe that in the age of AI, what's really going to make the difference for companies is their brand, their marketing, their storytelling, and how
Yeah.
human they feel and how they're able to actually have empathy and connect with customers. And so storytelling becomes critically important because the barriers to creating functional products is, so significantly reduced. You can vibe code a workable like web app or mobile app very quickly now that it's being commoditized. Now, that's what's also interesting about dating apps is it a commodity now, right? And it's also interesting to intersect considering the growth stages of companies. Because for a startup, because Bumble is not the first dating app, right? Facebook was not the first social media platform. But at the stage of a startup, it's very important to niche and to have a strong brand that stands for something that's memorable, that's unique, that does something just a little bit differently, that's understandable, right? And for Bumble, it was really powerful because they leveraged their branding and storytelling in a way that empowered women and, caught that need, recognized that no one else was doing that, and was able to find a niche to get to a certain stage of growth. Now, with so much other competition, and this, I think, is a similar parallel with both Southwest and even Facebook, users expect more and more features, right? And it actually is very important to understand what your customers are seeking and desiring in the product set. And so if, for example, Southwest did and understood the research that, hey, for the majority, no longer is this a feature, it's almost a bug. Well, can we shift that? But can we still have a unique brand identity and a unique, for example, point-to-point system rather than, the hub system of other airlines? What really differentiates the brand and what even allows you to scale greater, right? If Facebook only forever limited itself to universities, it absolutely would not be the behemoth that it is today, and its impact on society would be lower than, again, arguably whether or not this is good or bad, their impact to society would be smaller than they would have desired. And so it doesn't make sense for a brand like Bumble, who got a lot of brand recognition for a specific core feature, to change that.
Mhm.
I don't have all the data, but I could see where they're coming from.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, this isn't the first change that Bumble has tried. They've, gone into, Bumble women to women in terms of like creating, being a friendship app, right? For
Mhm.
women,
Bumble
which
BFF.
obviously, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they had different, verticals that they could expand into. But the main product of dating of their dating app has seemingly just started failing more and more compared to Tinder and Hinge and all those, which also have their own type of brand persona that I think of them as, right? So this seems to be I mean, I don't want to say it's the last recourse, but obviously I think much like Southwest, where if it's a thing that you're finding out that people actively detest or aren't using to the utmost, then like what really is the point of keeping it other than slowly dying, a slow
Mhm.
death, I guess, but and I think it's there's also a lot to be said about you as like the in-house team kind of figuring out what these changes are, right? I think another example, right, that recently came to the fore was the Cracker Barrel like branding change, right? Where it's like they were trying to update their brands and
Mhm.
the restaurants and stuff. And the CEO was just fired after a year because it ended up being a massive failure. And so us as marketers, right? We always have these ideas of like, oh, obviously, Cracker Barrel should have kept its, brand and the storytelling, everything it was doing, because that's what people, were going there for. Whereas like with Bumble, it makes sense that the main goal that they're trying to achieve is getting people to date, right? It's not that they have to date in a specific way, which is that women have to reach out to men. And I think it makes sense where it's like when you break it down to what it is that your ideal customer is coming to you for, then how do you help them achieve that, right? And if it means removing all like, the kitschiness or, this thing that you thought was the main reason people were coming to you for, then I think that that's an okay thing for you to do, when you have to, and I think it is going to play out to Bumble's favor, because if you're going back to what their main goal is to get people to date and want to, use their app, then like the having women have to communicate first isn't that main thing. And then obviously they might lose some of
Yeah.
their, hardcore fans, like that's fine. But I think in terms of serving everybody else and then where we are now, I mean, societally, things have changed from when Bumble first came out, then it's like you have to meet your user where they are now and not keep things where they used to be because that's what worked for you back when you first came out. And I think it's okay for companies to recognize that and think about, well, where are we now? How do we serve our current target user and current target new users? And like, what is it that they expect and what is it they want from us? And then work from there in order to best serve them.
Yeah. Well, this really reminds me of a concept that I talk about in my book. I liked it so much I created a chart for it, which is really to talk about the difference between marketing myopia and jobs
Uh-huh.
to be done.
Yep.
So marketing myopia, neither terms of which that I created, but have been heavily researched by two very different Harvard professors, actually. But marketing myopia is just so centered around your own like story, your own product features, right? Like those little pieces, like looking down at the thing that you've made or the thing that you offer. Where
Hmm.
jobs to be done is much more strategic and customer centric
Hmm.
instead of tactical and company centric. So, what is jobs to be done? Well, it's this concept that Clayton Christensen popularized in his book Competing Against Luck, and it was invented by a guy called Anthony Ulwick, who runs a consultancy called Strategen. But the concept is that we are constantly hiring and firing products and services in our lives as long as they serve our needs.
Hmm.
So let me ask you, do you need a kitchen knife that's 8 inches long Damascus steel, 18-degree cutting angle, full take. Like, do you need a kitchen knife or do you need the ability to quickly and consistently create a healthy meal for your family?
Mhm.
Right? The job to be done is the meal. And so this knife serves a certain function and it will continue to serve that function in your life as long as it does its job. But
Mhm.
once there is another product that can do that job better, maybe I need to make a lot of salsa and I need to cut a ton of onions, right? Maybe a food processor is a better solution for the job to be done than the kitchen knife. And so in that instance, the kitchen knife gets fired. And so
Mhm.
you think about this for brands as well, because we do talk, and I would, liken in this analogy that women are the ones that outreach. That is a product feature. But what
Mhm.
is the job to be done that Bumble solved for? Is it empowering women? Is it helping women feel safe? Is it, right? Like there's all these more esoteric values of what Bumble's brand stands for today. And so they can continue to scale and grow and still meet the core job to be done, such as creating a safe environment for women in a dating context through other features and through the brand and through the way that they filter men and women and how they, use their algorithms to connect folks. There's other ways to meet that job to be done that maybe do need to evolve past focusing on specific product features.
Yeah. I think that that's a great way of explaining, having to think about what it is that your target customer is coming to you for and how
Hmm.
you're selling yourself to them. And I think sometimes that gets lost in this like narrative of, who we are and our mission and all that. And sometimes that ends up getting in the way of, is your customer actually happy or, with how you're providing that service? So that's why I think, these two examples for me just kind of show that like sometimes change is good. And that it's working for Southwest. We don't quite know if it's going to work for Bumble, but they're at least trying, something new. And you're right, like there are other ways for them to try to fix the problem of their declining growth. And then this is, the way that they are doing it now after trying a variety of other ways. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. Okay, cool. So a couple lessons for me are that when your differentiator is driving away your customers, it's no longer a differentiator that deserves to stay. It's you have to know what your customer is coming to you for and what their ultimate goal is. And it served its purpose, back when it was first created. It's what made it, it gave it all the headlines, right? Like this is how it was going to be different from Tinder and Hinge and all the other like dating apps. And so it did what it needed to at the time. Another lesson for me is that you can go back and change things that maybe were useful to you back when you first started. And because I've seen a lot of companies just like think that their positioning has to stay the same, throughout their growth. And it's like, no, it served its purpose when you first started and it was what it was at that time. Now that we're, where we are now, is it still serving its function? Is the positioning, is the differentiator, is our mission, our values and all that, like, are they still serving the purpose? And if they're not, then it's okay to change. And in fact, you have to. Otherwise, you're just, setting yourself up to lose. Um, and then the third thing is that data can tell you what customers say they want, but it can't always tell you why they came to you in the first place. So this is a huge lesson, at least for me, because I thought the Southwest thing was going to fail abysmally, and it hasn't. That like people may say that the main reason that they came to you is that they wanted the check bags and they wanted the free, open seating. But then turns out that the people that are actually buying from you prefer the assigned seating. And at that point, you got to go where the customer is taking you, especially the ones that are paying for you. So don't get beholden to the data that says that, the main reason why they came is, the old thing. Be open to trying new things and seeing where the data takes you then, because, you might find that you are now more profitable than you were before the change.
Yeah.
Any
Well, it's
lessons from you?
interesting because,
Oh,
yeah, I mean, and part of the question that comes to mind is, well, what data are we referencing? So there's a framework I talk about in my book that I call the qual quant feedback loop. qualitative and quantitative customer research, essentially. And so you always want to be leveraging both consistently. Qualitative research are non-numerical, so customer interviews, essentially. And the quantitative is the data analytics, it's the survey results, right? You leverage qualitative to understand the dimensions by which your customers care about items, and the quantitative to actually understand how important they are. And you can kind of do this for the brand as a whole, but you can continue to do this to more minute product details and features. For example, I've worked for a multi-billion-dollar e-commerce company, and we did this for the brand. And then we also did it for their loyalty program, for their mobile app, et cetera. And so it is important, right? Because the data numbers might say one thing, but the interviews may, help nudge you in a different direction that you can then rediscover what the numbers actually say around those dimensions. And we need to have enough empathy for our customers to do that, to constantly understand how important different areas are for them. My book is called Keeping People Interested, the only KPI that really matters. And the premise of the book is that in order to keep people interested, you have to be interested in them, which means having empathy, which means all the things I just talked about. And we've been discussing around adding value, understanding their deep and true needs, and actually providing value to them in those needs.
Yeah. I mean, I love that thinking because it positions marketers to be interested in their audience. That shouldn't be a novel concept. But sometimes it feels as if companies don't care about their audience or their target customer, that they're just trying to extract as much value as they can from them, without giving back or acknowledging that, they're there, they care. And then, when the audience does turn away, they're confused as to why or what they did. And it's like, well, if you look at your behavior and how you've been treating them, it would make sense why they no longer like you. So I like the idea of like continuing to be interested in your target audience, one, but then B, allowing for the change when you do have new target audience. And figuring out, are they in contrast or is it something that can grow together as your company continues growing and you get more target audiences? Awesome.